The wind carried dust across the open plains, rolling in low waves that glittered faintly in the late afternoon sun. It was the kind of wind that traveled for miles without meeting a single fence. A wind that whispered stories of long-gone herds and lonely travelers. Along the narrow, hard-packed road, leading toward the town of Red Butte, walked a woman and 5 children, their silhouettes bent slightly forward, like figures carved from exhaustion. Her name was Evelyn Grant. Though few would know that in these parts, she had buried her husband in Missouri 4 months earlier. A good man taken too soon by a fever that tore through every farmstead like wildfire. By the time she understood they were losing him, there was no doctor left within 100 miles. Grief didn't give her time to fall apart. Hunger had a way of keeping a woman moving even when her heart broke with every step. Her children trod behind her. Small boots scuffing the dirt, their stomachs too empty to complain anymore. The youngest, Anna, clung to her mother's skirt, tiny fingers trembling. "Ma," whispered one of the boys. "David, how far till town?" "Not far," Evelyn whispered, though she didn't know for sure. Her voice cracked as she spoke. "Just keep walking, sweetheart." Her legs wobbled beneath her. She had taken the last of their dried beans and boiled them into a thin broth 3 nights ago. Since then, they'd lived on hope and stubborn will to things that weren't enough to fill a belly. Ahead, the road curved around a cluster of cottonwoods, and beyond them lay a wide, open clearing. A single rider stood waiting in the shade. Evelyn froze. The cowboy sat tall in the saddle, hat tilted low over his brow. The sun lit the edges of his figure, outlining him like a painting. His horse, a broad-chested dun mare, shifted its weight and nickered softly. The man made no move toward them. He simply observed. For a moment, fear fluttered in Evelyn's chest. Out here, strangers could be salvation or disaster. She gathered her children closer. "Stay behind me," she murmured. "Don't say a word." As they approached, the cowboy dismounted with an easy grace, dusting off his gloves. He was tall, lean, with sun-browned skin and eyes the color of storm clouds. He nodded once, polite but unreadable. "Evenin', ma'am," he said, voice steady as an old oak beam. "Road's quiet today. You folks headed to town?" Evelyn swallowed hard, throat dry. "Yes," she managed. We're just passing through." The cowboy's gaze swept over the children, lingering a second too long on their hollow cheeks and thin arms. He didn't look threatening, just concerns genuinely so. "You've been walking a while," he noted gently. Evelyn hesitated, pride and desperation twisting inside her. She didn't want to beg, but her legs trembled again, betraying her weakness. The cowboy's brows lifted slightly, eyes softening as though he saw straight through her silence. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "when's the last time these youngins ate?" Her breath shuddered. She turned her head away, ashamed, tears stinging her eyes. "We haven't eaten in days," she whispered. The wind fell silent. Even the leaves above seemed to hold their breath. The cowboy stepped forward, not close enough to crowd her, but close enough she could feel the kindness in him before he spoke. "You'll never go hungry again," he said simply. There was no boast in his voice, no swagger, no promise made lightly, just conviction, a man's word spoken plain. Evelyn blinked up at him, startled. She wanted to doubt him. The world had taught her caution, but something in his tone, steady, warm, honest, broke through the walls she had built. "I don't even know your name," she murmured. He tipped his hat. "Name's Colt McAllister. I work cattle up on the Whitlock Ranch. Got supplies in my saddlebags, and there's more where that came from." He turned to his horse, pulling free a canvas pack. He set it gently on the ground, opened it, and began laying out food: a loaf of bread, dried meat, apples. Evelyn stared, her breath catching. Her children looked at her, eyes wide, waiting for permission. "Go on," she whispered. They fell upon the food with quiet, desperate gratitude, chewing slowly, as if afraid it might vanish. Colt watched them with a soft expression, before glancing back at her. "You look about ready to fall over yourself," he said. "I'm fine," she lied. "You ain't," he replied calmly. "Sit a spell, rest." She sank onto a fallen log, exhaustion heavy in her bones. Colt stood nearby, arms crossed loosely as he kept watch down the road, as though protecting strangers was something he just did without question. For a long moment, Evelyn studied him, the way he stood steady and sure, the gentleness in his movements, the spark of something warm behind his quiet demeanor. He was a stranger, but he felt like the first safe place she'd found in months. Evelyn hadn't realized how tightly she'd been holding herself together until she finally sat down. Her entire body trembled, not with fear this time, but with the sudden relief of stopping. The late afternoon sun warmed her shoulders while the cottonwoods whispered overhead, their branches swaying slowly, like they were rocking her children to sleep. Colt McAllister crouched beside the fire pit left behind by another traveler long gone. He struck a match, the faint scrape echoing in the stillness. Flames caught quickly, curling around the dry brush he'd gathered. It wasn't long before the smell of warming bread and sizzling meat drifted through the air. Evelyn's oldest, 13-year-old Jacob, watched him with a wary curiosity that made Colt smile. "Ever start a fire, son?" Colt asked. Jacob stiffened at the word son, but not in a bad way, more like it had been a long time since a man had used it with him. "I used to help Pa," Jacob said quietly. Colt nodded. "Bet you were good at it too." The boy's chest, puffed with the smallest bit of pride, Colt seemed intent on watering. Evelyn watched the exchange, her heart tightening in her chest. She wasn't used to kindness anymore, certainly not from strangers, and yet here stood a man who looked at her children like they mattered, like they were worth something. It had been months since anyone had looked at her like she was worth something. When her gaze drifted toward Colt, she found him looking back at her. Heat rushed to her cheeks, and she quickly dropped her eyes to the dirt. She didn't know what to make of the flutter in her stomach. She wasn't ready for that. She wasn't sure she ever would be. But it was there, and she couldn't deny it. Colt cleared his throat, turning back to the fire. "Town's still about 6 miles off," he said. "You won't make it before dark, on foot." "We've walked in the dark before," Evelyn murmured. "Don't mean you should." He took a bite of jerky, chewing slowly. "Lots of coyotes out tonight. They don't go after people unless they're desperate, but some of 'em get desperate." She shivered. "So what do you suggest? You ride my horse?" Her head snapped up. "Absolutely not. That's your only way home." Colt shook his head. "I'll walk beside her. She's a steady girl. You and the little ones can ride. The older two can trade off with me if she gets tired." "That's too much," Evelyn said, shaking her head firmly. "You've given us food already." "You don't." "I meant what I said." Colt's eyes met hers, unwavering. "You're not going hungry again? Not walking till you drop? Not with 5 kids depending on you?" Evelyn felt something sharp and hot rise in her throat, emotion she didn't want to name. She looked away, blinking fast. "I don't want charity," she whispered. "Ain't charity," Colt replied gently. "It's help. Folks forgot how to offer it these days." Her silence stretched between them, heavy and fragile. She wasn't used to people noticing her burdens, let alone offering to shoulder any part of them. Colt stood and dusted off his gloves. "Tell you what, we'll rest a bit longer. Let the kids fill their bellies proper. Then we'll head out slow. Won't take us long." As he tended to the fire, Evelyn's youngest, Anna, toddled over and tugged at his pant leg. Colt knelt immediately, eye level with her. She offered him the last bite of her apple, her little hand sticky with juice. Colt smiled softly. "That's awful kind of you, darlin', but you go on and finish it." Anna shook her head. "You gave us food. You can have some too." Evelyn pressed a hand to her heart. Her daughter, starving for days, was offering food back. Colt hesitated only a moment before taking the tiny offering and taking a small, exaggerated bite. "Best apple I've ever had," he said, making Anna giggle. Something inside Evelyn melted painfully, beautifully, as the sun dipped lower, painting the sky gold and crimson. Colt saddled his horse. He lifted the 2 youngest up first, securing them gently with a blanket to keep them steady. Evelyn hesitated when he turned to her. "I can walk," she insisted. "No doubt you can," he said softly. "You've walked farther than most folks ever will, but you don't need to anymore." There it was again, that warmth in his tone, that unwavering certainty that made her feel seen in a way she hadn't felt in months. She swallowed. "Just this once, then." Colt offered his hand. She took it, her fingers brushed his palm, calloused, warm, steady, and a jolt shot through her chest. Colt felt it too. She could see it in the way his jaw tensed, in the brief flicker of his eyes. He lifted her easily into the saddle, his hands firm at her waist. For a moment, they were close enough to feel each other's breath, close enough she could smell the leather, the faint scent of cedar soap, the warmth of him, close enough to realize she trusted him, more than she should. Colt stepped back, clearing his throat. "Let's get you home safe," he said. Home, she hadn't had one of those in a long, long time. The sky dimmed into the soft violet of early evening as they continued toward Red Butte. Colt walked beside the horse, his stride even and sure, one hand resting lightly on the reins. Evelyn held Anna in front of her, the child already half asleep against her chest. while her son Benjamin sat snug behind her, small arms wrapped around her waist. The horse's steady gait rocked them gently, so gently that Evelyn felt her eyes droop. She straightened quickly, embarrassed. "Don't worry," Colt said with a faint smile. "She's the smoothest ride in 3 counties." Evelyn felt heat rise to her cheeks again. "I wasn't falling asleep." "No, ma'am," he agreed in a tone that said he saw right through her. "Just resting your eyelids a bit." She tried not to smile. She failed. Jacob and David walked ahead on either side of Colt, peppering him with every question a pair of curious boys could think of. "How fast can your horse run? You ever rope a wild stallion? What's the biggest herd you moved?" Colt answered each with patient amusement, never talking down to them. "Fast enough. Once, and no wild stallions. Thank God. Those boys'll kill ya quicker than a rattler if you're stupid enough to try." The boys laughed, hanging on his every word. Evelyn watched the scene with a complicated ache. She had done her best to be both mother and father these last months, but she couldn't give her sons what Colt gave them effortlessly: the presence of a strong, steady man who saw them as more than burdens. For a moment, she imagined what her husband might think of this stranger. Would he be grateful someone had helped them? Would he be jealous? Angry? Would he want her to move on someday? The thought twisted deep in her chest. She pressed her lips together and looked away from Colt. "Don't think about that," she told herself. "You barely know the man." But her heart whispered something else. "You trust him." The road narrowed as they climbed a small rise. When they reached the top, Red Butte lay spread below, a scattering of buildings glowing amber in the twilight. Lanterns flickering from windows and porches. Beyond the town stood a red rock cliff that caught the last of the sunlight, blazing like a monument. "There she is," Colt said. "Might be small, but the folks here got good hearts." "Mostly." Evelyn's stomach tightened. "What do you mean, mostly?" Colt hesitated. "There's always a few folks who think they own the whole town. But don't worry, they ain't a problem for you." She caught the shadow in his eyes but didn't press. "Not yet." As they approached the outskirts of town, Evelyn sat straighter, anxiety creeping up her spine. People lingered outside the saloon, their silhouettes tall against the lantern glow. A few ranch hands leaned against a fence near the livery. Someone laughed drunkenly inside the Red Butte Tavern. Evelyn's pulse quickened. She could feel eyes on them, curious, assessing. A woman alone with 5 children and a cowboy. The kind of scene that sparked gossip. Colt seemed to sense her fear. He moved closer, placing a calming hand on the horse's neck. "You're safe," he said softly. "I promise." And just like that, the panic in her chest eased. He led them down the main street toward a 2-story building with a wide porch and a wooden sign swinging from chains. Mrs. Foster's boarding house. Warm lamplight spilled out the windows, giving the place a welcoming glow. Colt stopped and looked up at her. "Mrs. Foster'll take you in tonight. She's fair with her prices and kinder than her tongue lets on. I'll vouch for you." Evelyn swallowed hard. "I don't have much money." "You don't need any tonight," Colt said. "I'll settle your board." "No," Evelyn said immediately, shaking her head. "Colt, you've already done enough. I can't let you." "You can," he said gently, "and you should. Just for tonight." Something in his expression, a mixture of warmth, concern, and something deeper she wasn't prepared to name, broke through her resistance. She exhaled slowly. "Thank you," she murmured. Jacob looked up at her, hopeful. "We get a real bed, Ma." Evelyn ran a hand through his hair. "Looks like we do." Colt stepped onto the porch and knocked. Moments later, the door swung open, revealing a stout woman with graying hair and spectacles perched low on her nose. "Colt McAllister," Mrs. Foster said, crossing her arms. "You'd better not be asking me to board horses again. The last one chewed my porch rail clear through." Colt laughed. "No horses this time, ma'am. Got a widow and her children here, need a room for the night." Mrs. Foster's sharp eyes softened when she saw the kids. "Mercy, they're skin and bone. Bring 'em in." Evelyn eased herself off the horse with Colt's help. His hands briefly steadying her waistband, stepped inside the warm glow of the boarding house. As Mrs. Foster ushered the children upstairs, Evelyn turned back. Colt still stood in the doorway, hat in hand. "Will you come back tomorrow?" she asked before she could talk herself out of it. Colt's eyes met hers, something unspoken passing between them, warm and magnetic. "I will," he said. Evelyn's pulse fluttered, because she believed him. Morning sunlight spilled through the thin curtains of the boarding house room, painting long golden stripes across the wooden floor. Evelyn woke slowly, unsure for a moment where she was. The mattress beneath her was soft to soft, the blanket was warm, the air smelled faintly of biscuits and coffee. For a rare and precious moment, there was no fear in her chest. No urgency to gather the children. No need to keep walking. Just stillness. Then Anna stirred beside her, tiny fingers curling into Evelyn's sleeve. The other children slept in the narrow beds across the room, tangled in blankets like they'd been starved for rest as much as they'd been starved for food. Evelyn brushed a strand of hair from Anna's face. "We're safe," she whispered, as if speaking the words aloud made them more true. Downstairs, muffled voices drifted up, pots clanging, Mrs. Foster humming, someone laughing. Evelyn sat up slowly, pushing loose hair from her face. She felt stronger this morning, though still sore and worn, but there was something else inside her today, something unfamiliar. Hoped she wasn't sure if it scared her or warmed her. She dressed quietly and tiptoed down the stairs. Mrs. Foster stood behind the counter of the small dining room, flour dusting her apron. "Mornin', dear," the older woman said. "Your young'uns are sleepin' like rocks. Let 'em be." Evelyn nodded, offering a shy smile. "Thank you for taking us in. I don't know how to repay." Mrs. Foster cut her off with a snort. "You'll repay me by making sure those children never get that thin again, and by eatin' a proper breakfast yourself." Evelyn blinked at the unexpected kindness. Then the front door opened. Colt McAllister stepped inside, sunlight outlining him from behind. He removed his hat respectfully when he saw Evelyn, and for a moment, the room seemed to shrink to just the two of them. His eyes warmed immediately, faint smile, steady gaze, like he'd been hoping she was awake already. "You're early," Evelyn said, voice catching slightly. Colt shrugged. "Told you I'd come back. I don't break my word." Mrs. Foster snorted again. "Boy, grab a plate and sit. You look half-starved yourself." Colt chuckled. "Yes, ma'am." Wouldn't dare argue. He joined Evelyn at the table, and Mrs. Foster heaped their plates with biscuits, eggs, bacon, and thick slices of fried potatoes. Evelyn looked at the food with disbelief. "I haven't seen a breakfast like this in months," she whispered. Colt's expression softened. "You deserve better than scraps, Evelyn." Hearing her name in his voice did something strange to her stomach. They ate quietly for a moment, the sounds of forks scraping plates nearly overwhelming in their novelty. Evelyn closed her eyes briefly, savoring the warmth spreading through her chest with each bite. When she looked up, she caught Colt watching her, not in the way some men watched women, but with something gentler, something protective, something patient. She felt her heart twist. "What happens now?" she asked softly. Colt wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "That's up to you. I can find you work in town, if you want it. Mrs. Foster always needs help with laundry and cleaning. There's a schoolhouse lookin' for an assistant. Or," he hesitated, "if you're willin', I can take you out to the Whitlock Ranch. They've been short on kitchen help for months, and it comes with a cabin. Not fancy, but big enough for you and the children. A cabin, a place to live, a roof, a fresh start." Evelyn's breath caught. It sounded too good. Too easy. Nothing in her life had come without cost. "Why are you doing all this for us?" she whispered. Colt held her gaze, steady and true. "Because someone should have helped you long before I came along. Because I can offer it. And because," he paused, searching for the right words, "because I want to." Her heart pounded in her chest. "You don't even know me," she said. "Maybe not," Colt admitted, "but I'd like to." His voice softened. "If you'll let me." Heat filled Evelyn's cheeks. She looked down, unsure how to respond. No man had looked at her like that since her husband died. She wasn't sure she remembered how to let someone in. She wasn't sure she should, but the truth whispered inside her. She wanted to. Before she could speak, the boarding house door slammed open. A tall man with a thick beard and a scowl strode inside, boots thudding hard against the floorboards. His eyes landed on Colt, narrowing immediately. Well, the man growled. "If it ain't Colt McAllister." Colt stiffened. Evelyn felt a ripple of fear. Mrs. Foster muttered under her breath, "Lord help us." Colt stood slowly, placing himself subtly between Evelyn and the stranger. "What do you want, Briggs?" Colt asked coolly. The man Briggs spat on the floor. "Heard you've been bringing strays into town. Whitlock ain't gonna like you picking up charity cases on his behalf." Evelyn felt the insult like a slap. Colt didn't flinch. "They ain't charity cases. They're people. And Whitlock don't speak for me." Briggs stepped closer, face inches from Colt's. Maybe he should. Colt didn't back down, and the air between them sparked with tension. Evelyn stood, heart hammering, realizing for the first time that Colt had enemies, and she had just stepped into the middle of something bigger than she understood. And yet, even with danger crackling in the air, one thing was painfully, undeniably clear. She wasn't walking away from Colt McAllister. Not now. The tension in the boarding house was thick enough to taste sharp, metallic, like lightning in the air. Briggs glared at Colt with such force that Evelyn instinctively stepped back, her hands finding the edges of the table behind her. Colt's shoulders squared. He didn't touch his gun. He didn't raise his voice, but something in his stance changed, something protective, fierce, and unshakably calm. Briggs, Colt said, his tone low, steady, you've had your say. Now leave. Briggs smirked. Whitlock's gonna hear all about this. You bringing wanderers into town actin' like a hero. Think he'll let you keep your job once he knows you're draggin' trouble into Red Butte? Evelyn flinched. Trouble. The word stung because she knew he meant her. Colt's jaw tightened. They're not trouble. They're hungry. And they're mine to look after now. The room fell silent. Even Briggs stopped smirking. Mine to look after. Evelyn felt her breath hitch, her heart thudding painfully against her ribs. He meant he would protect them. All of them, including her. Briggs scoffed and stepped back, though his eyes remained narrowed. You're mackin', a mistake, McAllister. Whitlock's got plans for that ranch, and folks like her don't fit in. Colt took one step forward. You best leave before Mrs. Foster throws you out herself. Mrs. Foster, who was indeed glaring at Briggs with a frying pan-worthy expression, jabbed a thumb toward the door. Briggs spit near the doorframe and stormed out, his heavy boots echoing down the porch. The second he was gone, Evelyn felt her legs weaken. She sank into a chair, breathing hard. Colt turned to her immediately. You all right? He asked softly. Yes, she whispered, then corrected herself. I will be. Colt knelt beside her, lowering his voice. Briggs talks big, always has. He don't make decisions for the ranch. Whitlock does, and the old man's got more sense than that fool ever will. But he said, Evelyn began, but Colt cut her off gently. I don't care what he said. I want you at the ranch. And if Whitlock's got a problem with that, I'll handle it. Evelyn swallowed hard. He spoke like someone who had already made up his mind. And his heart. She glanced toward the staircase where her children slept. Colt, this could bring trouble to you. Colt shook his head. Doesn't matter. But Evelyn, his voice softened. You don't owe me fear. You don't owe me anything. I'm doing this because it's right. Because it's right. Not because he expected something from her. Not because he wanted gratitude or praise. But because his heart was good. Evelyn felt tears prick her eyes, not from sadness, but from the unfamiliar weight of being cared for. Colt stood and offered his hand. Come on, let's take a walk before the kids wake. She hesitated before taking it. His fingers wrapped around hers, warm and strong, guiding her outside. The morning air was crisp. The sky a pale blue with thin streaks of cloud drifting across the horizon. They walked only a few steps before Evelyn stopped. What happens if Whitlock does side with Briggs? She asked. Colt met her gaze. Then I'll find another ranch to ride for. Or I'll take you and the kids somewhere else. Plenty of work in these territories. She stared at him, stunned. You'd leave your life behind. Colt didn't hesitate. Lives can be rebuilt. People matter more. Something inside her chest cracked open, something deep. Something yearning she hadn't allowed herself to feel since her husband died. Colt wasn't trying to replace her past. He wasn't pushing himself into her future. He was simply standing with her in the present, offering steadiness where she'd had none. They reached the edge of town where the red cliffs towered in the distance, glowing under the rising sun. Colt stopped, turning to her fully. Tell me what you're thinking, Evelyn. Her lips parted, but the words tangled in her throat. She didn't know how to explain the storm inside her. Fear, gratitude, longing, caution, hope. Colt, I don't know how to start over, she whispered. You already have, he said. You did it the moment you kept walking with those children. You're stronger than you think. Evelyn felt tears spill over. I don't want to be a burden. You're not, Colt said firmly. You never were. He reached out slowly as if giving her every chance to pull away and brushed his thumb along her cheek, wiping a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. Her breath caught. The world around them seemed to fade. Evelyn, he murmured, voice soft as warm summer dusk. You and those kids. You ain't alone anymore. Not if you don't want to be. She closed her eyes, leaning into his hand, not fully, not yet, but enough to show she wasn't running. Not from him. Not from this. Then a sharp whistle broke the moment. A young stable boy ran up the road, panting hard. Mr. McAllister. The boy gasped. Mr. Whitlock says he needs you. Urgently. Colt dropped his hand, jaw tightening. What's wrong? The boy hesitated, glancing nervously at Evelyn. It's Briggs, sir. He's been staring up men. And Mr. Whitlock wants you at the ranch before sundown. Evelyn felt the old fear return, the kind that whispered danger was far from over. Colt touched her arm gently. I'll take care of it. He said it with absolute certainty. But this time, Evelyn wasn't sure if certainty would be enough. Because trouble was coming, and Colt might be walking straight into it. The sun had begun its slow descent behind the red cliffs of Red Butte, casting long shadows across the town and painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Colt McAllister rode fast, Jacob and David on either side, toward the Whitlock Ranch, the wind whipping past their faces. Evelyn, holding Anna and Benjamin securely on the horse behind him, clutched the reins tightly, her heart pounding as fast as the horse's hooves against the hard-packed trail. Ahead, the ranch stretched wide, horses grazing lazily in the corral, the main house standing solid against the horizon. But it wasn't the sight of the ranch that caused Evelyn's stomach to tighten. It was the knowledge that Briggs and his men waited somewhere nearby, ready to stir trouble, and that Colt was riding straight into the heart of it without hesitation. Colt's jaw was set, his eyes focused, but he cast a brief glance back at her. You've done enough waiting, Evelyn. Keep the kids steady. She nodded, swallowing hard, trying to hide her own fear. She didn't fully trust that everything would turn out smoothly, but she trusted him. As they reached the ranch entrance, a group of men, Briggs included, stood near the gate, arms crossed, glaring like wolves. Colt reined in the horse, setting himself squarely in front of Evelyn and the children. Evenin', he called. His voice was calm, steady, but it carried an unmistakable edge. I'm here about my family. Briggs laughed, a low, dangerous sound. Your family, he said mockingly. You think this town or Whitlock needs a stray widow and her kids? You're fooling yourself. Evelyn felt heat rise in her cheeks. She opened her mouth to speak, but Colt held up a hand. I'm not asking for approval, he said evenly. I'm making sure no harm comes to them. That includes me, Briggs. Briggs spat on the ground. Whitlock'll hear of this. You'll be out on the trail tomorrow. I'll be fine, Colt replied. But my family stays. You got that? For a moment, Briggs stared, then slowly backed down. He motioned to his men. Go on, for now. Colt exhaled but didn't relax. Stay close, he told Evelyn softly, guiding her and the children toward the ranch house. Once inside, he turned to her, his expression softening. You're safe now, for tonight, at least. Evelyn looked at him, the sun catching in his hair, and felt a warmth she hadn't known she could feel since her husband's death. She didn't need to speak the words. Her eyes said enough. Later, as the children were settled into beds in a small cabin Colt had arranged for them, Evelyn and Colt sat on the porch of the ranch house. The fading light painted the sky with deep shades of orange and pink. Crickets chirped in the distance, the gentle sound mingling with the soft rustle of leaves. For the first time in months, Evelyn felt a rare stillness, a quiet that wasn't edged with fear or desperation. You kept your word, she said softly. I didn't think anyone could. Not after everything. Colt's lips curved in a faint, humble smile. I told you I wouldn't let you go hungry, but it's more than that, Evelyn. You and your children, you deserve more than survival. You deserve a chance. Her heart ached with emotion. I don't know if I can start over. Not really. You can, Colt said, taking her hand gently. His fingers closed over hers, warm and steady. I'll be here. You don't have to do it alone. Evelyn looked into his eyes, seeing the sincerity, the quiet strength, and the promise of protection. She felt a surge of something she hadn't dared to feel in months: hope, courage, and the first flicker of love. Not the reckless, uncertain kind, but a steady, enduring kind that could grow with time. Colt leaned closer, brushing a strand of hair from her face. There's no rush, he murmured. We'll take it one day at a time. But I want you to know, I'm not leaving. Not now, not ever. If you'll let me stay. Tears glimmered in her eyes, and for the first time in a long while, Evelyn allowed herself to truly breathe. She nodded, resting her forehead lightly against his. Then, stay. The sound of soft laughter drifted from the cabin, where her children were finally asleep, safe and warm. Evelyn felt a sense of completeness she hadn't known she could have. The fear, the hunger, the endless road, they had all brought her to this moment. But it was more than survival. It was life. It was love. And it was real. Colt brushed a hand along her cheek again, and for the first time, Evelyn allowed herself to believe in the future. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Briggs Whitlock, the uncertainty of the frontier, she wouldn't face them alone. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the last golden rays across Red Butte, Evelyn felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope, solid, steady, and unshakable. With Colt by her side, she finally understood that the road ahead didn't have to be walked alone. Together, they watched the red cliffs glow in the twilight, hearts aligned, hands entwined, ready to face whatever tomorrow would bring. A new life awaited them, one filled with safety, family, and the quiet promise of love blossoming under the wide-open sky.